invincible. Kirk is not an attorney. This is not legal advice. This is to be considered for educational purposes only.
Welcome to Kirk's Law Corner Live with your host, Kirk Pendergrass. Here he is. Kirk.
Good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us tonight. We got a special guest, Glenita Zeiderfeld. And want to give our thanks outs to our sponsors on Blog Talk Radio, Brian Kinter, Neil Shelton, Randy Davis, and Cheyenne Davis. Thank you for sponsoring the radio show slot on Blog Talk Radio, Future of Our Children Network. Those are all archived there, and actually I need to get the last few episodes uploaded to there, means we changed our format and the way we're doing this, thanks to Ted. Ted Fogg over there is our techie guy. He promotes this YouTube, Twitter, obviously through Facebook, the March Us, and a whole bunch of other programs that he has in the background. He goes all over the world. So we're trying to reach as many people as we can out there to help spread the education, the word, what the law actually says. And that's why it's Kirk's Law Corner. We talk about law and what the law actually says. So, Glenita, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi, Kirk. Thank you for inviting me.
We don't have Josh tonight. Josh Gibbons was supposed to come on as well. He is a candidate-elect as well. But he has a sick family, so he's taking care of his family. So we will have him on at a future episode and possibly have you back on here again as well. So we want to put these two candidates out there as candidate-elects for here in Idaho. Now, you're from District 25, and I can't remember where Josh is from, but what district he's from. But
Josh is from 11.
Okay. So you're a House representative. That's what you're running for, position.
Right, in District 25, which consists of Jerome County. District 25 consists of 11 cities. It's Jerome County and part of Twin Falls County, but not the city of Twin Falls. It consists of Jerome, Eden, Hazleton, and then we go out to Hanson, Kimberly, Filer, Buell, and then all the way to the border of Nevada.
Wow. That's a pretty good district.
Yeah, a lot of miles.
So if any of you are out in those areas in that city, in those cities, this is the gal you want to look at on the ballot come May for the primaries, and then what is it, July?
May for the primaries, May 15th, and then it's November 6th for the general. But the May 15th is a really important date because that's really where the decisions are made on May 15th for Idaho.
So get out there and get registered to vote.
Yes.
I have personally had several conversations with Glenita. She's a wonderful woman. I've met her husband, Tom. Great man. Good people. And we're going to get into that right now. So what brought you into, what made you want to run?
Well, probably a couple years ago, there's just been some things that we've gotten involved in and started educating ourselves in things and then witnessing things. And it gets to the point where it grieves you to either, it could grieve you to just want to run, or it can grieve you to action. And so that's pretty much what it's done for me is, you know, we need to elect good people. But if good people don't run, then we don't have anyone to vote for. And the last few, we had somebody running against my incumbent last year, but usually there's not a lot of people running against anybody, so there's no one to vote for. And we just need to give the people that opportunity to have options.
Right. That actually happens quite often, where, especially in like the rural areas, like where you're at, not a whole lot of people even think about running for office because, oh, well, I don't think I would get elected. So nobody runs. And then all we end up with is whoever's been in there previously, because they're the only ones still running. So.
Right. Or they think that they don't have the education for it. Yeah. Or they just don't think that, they have to be a certain, have certain knowledge or I think it's more important anymore. I mean, because the knowledge and experience comes with anything that you do. You don't ever have the experience at the beginning as you do at the later. But, the thing is we're really missing the heart. We're missing the heart and people just doing it because it's the right thing to do. It's a responsibility. We have the right, but it's really a responsibility as well for us to keep the republic. It's a responsibility of us citizens.
Well, let's call it what it really is. It's a duty. It's a moral duty and ethical obligation.
Yes.
As an American.
Yes.
Stand up for our form of government and our way of life. And if we don't do that, it doesn't get preserved. So this is one reason why I'm promoting you, is because I have had the conversations with you and I have a basic understanding of what you stand for. And you're a liberty-loving patriot. You're involved with what's going on here locally and what's going on locally down in your area, which some of that we can't really talk about, but some of it we can. So let's get into some of the things that you stand for.
Well, I am standing for having transparency. I think, like we were talking about earlier about the Article 3, Section 12, about that there's not to have any secret meetings at all. And I think there's too many, there's just not enough, our representatives are not being open with the citizens. We just have to trust that they're doing what we voted them in to do. And there's just not a lot of transparency. And I think there's a lot of ways to bring that transparency to Boise and bring it to the people, because, I'm not going there myself. I'm going as we the people. I'm representing my district. It's their voice that will be heard. And so to hear their voice, they also have to be able to know what's going on in Boise. There needs to be transparency and no secret meetings whatsoever.
Right. So that's actually in part of our Idaho Code, Title 74, Transparency and Ethics in Government.
Right.
Go right back to what you were just talking about. Where it's codified is Title 74, Section 201, which specifically says the people of the state of Idaho do not yield their sovereignty to the agency so created. Therefore, the legislature finds that all public meetings and legislative acts are to be done in the open, not in secret.
Right.
That may not be exactly what it says, but that's just off the top of my head.
It's pretty close. So, yeah, from what I've just been learning, it was just some stuff that I've been reading, because I've been really reading and studying right now I'm reading the Idaho State Constitution. And just from what I've read, I would really like to challenge a lot of them out there to read it, because I don't know, just from what I'm witnessing and seeing what they're doing, I'm thinking they might not have read the Constitution that they've taken an oath to.
Right. Which was actually quite amazing, this election cycle for the president. The members of Congress actually all took turns reading parts of the United States Constitution. They really read. That was the first thing that they did this session. The beginning of the session was they all took turns reading pieces and parts of the Constitution and read it in its entirety on the record. There's no excuse for them not to know what it says.
And I think that's a great idea. I think that's why every session should open with that, just to give them a little reminder of, what their foundation is and what, we expect from them as, it's kind of like we're the boss and they're the employees, and I want to bring that up too, as citizens, we are always wanting to blame them, but, we really need to start taking responsibility ourselves, because we're the boss, and no business can survive if the boss only shows up every 4 years.
Absolutely.
We're self-employed. If we showed up, we would not have a business. It would be, I would be crazy. So no business can survive having the boss show up every 4 years. So as citizens, we have to be involved, not every 2 years, not every 4 years, but every day, every session, learn what's going on, what bills are trying to, bring forth, and educate yourselves, and want to. I just want to encourage people because, you have to want it. I can bring you the information, but I can't make you want to learn it. So I really want to give people that encouragement. And if I can learn it, anybody can learn it. So,
Right. So, and back to what you were just saying there is that, you represent people, which is the perfect mindset, because that's what it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to be. We elect people from the pool of we, the people. Mm-hmm. And we elect that person into a position of public office. Now, the other term is position of public trust, and that is appointed into a position of public trust. And I actually just was reading the other day in our Title 74, Ethics in Government, that's exactly what it says, which just reaffirms that either you're a elected official or you're in a position of public trust. If you work for the government in any way, shape, or form, under Idaho Code, it specifically says you're in a position of public trust, which I take you back to Article 6, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution. It specifically says the same thing. You're either an elected official or you're in a position of public trust, and they all shall be bound by oath. Period. That's the contract we make with the people who we either elect or get appointed.
Right.
That's it. That's the only two types of public servants we have, the ones that are elected and the ones that are appointed into a position of public trust. So it doesn't matter what agency you work for, you're an agent appointed into a position of public trust. And I hate to break this to you, I don't know if you know this or not, but a lot of our little agents under these agencies like Department of Health and Welfare and CPS, none of them have oaths of office.
They're
Department heads usually will have an oath of office, like the head of Department of Health and Welfare will have an oath of office. But that's about it. The rest of the agents don't. And they're required not only by the supreme law of the land to have an oath, but even Idaho Code, even Idaho Constitution. Where did you say that was at? You were just reading that before we started the show.
Which one?
About the oaths.
Oh, about the oath. That one was in
Section 25.
Yeah, Section 25.
Oath of office. The members of the legislature shall, before they enter upon duties of their respective offices, take or subscribe the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Idaho, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of senator or representative, as the case may be, according to the best of my ability, and such oath may be administered by the governor, secretary of state, or judge of the Supreme Court, or presiding officer of either house.
Yep. And I just don't know if they take that serious anymore. I'm taking it pretty serious. I mean, that's serious business to me, I think that, I really, to me, it's important that those that I'm representing in my district trust me and know that I'm going to do everything possible. I won't waver morally or ethically. It's just not in my character to do that. And so when I take an oath like that, it's going to be very, I really take it to heart. So, and I've grown up in Jerome. So everybody here pretty much knows me. I went to school with a lot of people here, and they're going to hold me to it. They're not going to be afraid to keep my feet to the fire. So and I care for them. I care for the people.
Right. That's what I love about you. you have a genuine feeling for the people. I mean, I sense that from the conversations that we've had, watching you speak. You know, you have a genuine concern about the well-being of the people. So
there's a lot of people hurting and a lot of people
for the people of your cities.
Yeah.
In your district.
Yep, there's a lot of people out there hurting and a lot of people that, you know, we just can't keep on, you know, extracting stuff from them. You know, we have to figure out different ways. You know, I was talking with a friend earlier. I feel like we have, it's like an old car that needs an engine overhaul, but we keep putting new tires on it. You know, I'm thinking it's not fixing the problem. It's a nice old car that doesn't run, but it has new tires, you know, and that's a lot of our problems. We need to go in there and really evaluate what's going on, you know, and really, you know, and with our businesses too, you know, we have to, I think there needs to be audits, you know, there has to be accountability. You know, we can't run our business that way, you know, so, you know, there's accountability there. And we, you know, if we were to just say, oh, well, I don't know where, you know, that money went to, or, you know, I think it went over there. I mean, there is, you know, certain responsibilities and accountabilities. And I feel like sometimes it's always easier to spend somebody else's money. And, you know, and people are tired of that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. We are tired of being overtaxed, paying for things that basically, in my mind, is unlawful. That's an usurpation of power. It's an exercise of an arbitrary power. You know, goes back to the part of educating yourself on what actually the Constitution says,
mm-hmm.
both of the state and the Supreme Law, and what does that Supreme Law actually cover? Because, you know, right here in our own, I know you have the same thing that I have. It's the Idaho Secretary of State published by the Secretary of State, and that is the Idaho State Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the United States Constitution. That's actually law right there, folks. That's law. Statutory law is not law. This is law. So this is what you take an oath to uphold, because the Constitution of the United States of America actually, because it is the supreme law of the land, and coupled with the Bill of Rights, the 9th and the 10th Amendment, the 9th Amendment specifically says we have other rights that are retained by the people that were not enumerated in the first 8. And then the 10th Amendment specifically limits the policing power, you know, because of that.
Right.
And that was James Madison's way of saying, hey, you know, these first 8 amendments here are articles of the Bill of Rights as an amendment to the Constitution is not all the rights that we have.
Right.
There's no, like Madison says, there's no way that he could write every single right that we do have down and put it in a Bill of Rights. And then even then, if you were to do that, it would still probably diminish the rights that, you know, even the rights that were there.
Right.
It would still diminish them. And that's why they shall not be denied or disparaged. You know, disparaged is laughing at me for claiming what my marital right or my parental right comes from the law of nature. You can't disparage me on that.
Right.
I have the right to make my claims. I have the right to claim where my right comes from within law.
Exactly.
It's protected by the 9th Amendment. Thank you, James Madison.
And if you don't know that, you know, if you don't know what those are, then you don't know when they were stripped from you, you know? And that's kind of where we're at. You know, a lot of people, it's like, if you don't know what you have, you don't know your Constitution, and you don't know what it is, then when it's been a slow fade. They're just taking things slowly away. And because we don't realize what was given to us by the founders, they're just stripping it away, and we're just smiling, and, you know.
That is the problem that we have, and that is the sole purpose and reason behind why I started doing Law for Dummies, was to educate the people on what their rights are, where they come from in law, and how to effectively claim and defend those rights.
Right.
Because if you don't know what your rights are, how are you going to know if you're being deprived of your rights?
Right. You know, and that's kind of where they want you to be. You know, they you know, don't want you to know. Otherwise, they would be teaching it more in school and teaching it, you know, and like he says, and taught and every session reading it every session if it was something they really wanted us to know. But because they don't want us to know, they don't read it, they don't teach it. You know, it's something that we individually have to, you know, and it really is individually our responsibility to learn. You know, we could point blame to all of that, but it really is up to each citizen to learn. It is their responsibility to do that.
It most certainly is.
Yeah.
That right there is what it's called. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Because the law is supposed to be written in plain English so that the common man can comprehend it, read it and comprehend it and understand it.
Right.
That's the other thing is, you know, the word game. Like understand actually in law and legal terms in a legal sense in court means that you stand under or stand in agreement.
Okay.
So if you're ever in court and the judge or somebody asks you, well, do you understand? Be very careful how you answer that, because they're asking you if you stand under it and you agree with it. Whatever it is they're asking you.
Do we understand? And where most people,
do you comprehend what I said?
But it means, so yeah, we are come a long way, because I'm learning all of this myself, and you know, it's difficult, you know, it's, you know, ignorance is bliss. You know.
Well,
it is, you know, and the more you know, that, you know, it is difficult, but you know what, that does grieve you to action. It does make you want to do something. You know, that has been a huge thing. I says, and with some experiences and things I've witnessed, you have to do something. I don't know how somebody cannot learn and know and see what's going on and not do something about it. I really wish, you know, my dream is it would be so awesome to see at least 3 candidates for every single race, you know, at least 3, you know, give the citizens 3 choices. You know, I wouldn't even, you know, to me that would be bringing back America, be seeing America and the citizens realizing what they have. And it would just be amazing to see people run for, you know, city council, for school boards, precinct committees. Let's just everybody run. I mean, it just all you have to do. You have to be a citizen with a heart to serve. That is your main things. Everything else will come as you learn, and people will actually draw to you. You know, you know, with everything I've been learning, actually people I've been drawn to people, or people have drawn to me that have been actually helping me with learning and how things work, and you know, so the fear factor is, you know, at first it was kind of scary, but you know what, it's every time I meet somebody, they're just like me. They're just exactly like me. And so that fear factor is gone. So I really just want to encourage everybody, you know, get out there and run for something, you know, let your voice be heard. Let's shake things up a little bit, you know, because a lot of them are just thinking that, you know, no one wants to run against them, and they almost get comfortable. You know, they're getting really comfortable because they're thinking no one's going to run against them. And I'm thinking, even if you don't win, at least you're making them have to, it's like iron sharpening iron. You're making them have to step up.
Right.
You know? A little bit of competition is good.
Well, and here last week we had Meet the Candidates and Spaghetti Feed, and we had Christy Zito there, which is a representative from Elmore County.
Yeah. Is that what, 23, I think?
23, I think. And that was what she was talking about, was that we can't do this as an individual by ourselves.
Mm-mm.
So for me, and this is where I've started going here, because, you know, I saw you at the political leadership class on Saturday. And then I saw you again Sunday night, and then again Wednesday night. So that was 3 times I had got a chance to talk with you a little bit. But this is the thing I'm doing. I'm trying to educate myself on how all this stuff works on the inside. I understand law. And what I mean, literally, I understand because I've read it. I know what the law says. I know what my rights are. I know where they come from in law. And I'm working on effectively defending those rights. And I'm starting to try to get a hold of people like you and Christy Zito. I want to share my knowledge. If you guys have issues, concerns, questions, I want to put myself out there to give aid to you folks. Because like you said, you're just now reading the Idaho Constitution. So I've got a few decades on education because I've been at this since 1995. So like I said, a lot of this stuff I have committed to memory. So I just want to be available to people like you because not everybody can do this. Hate to quote Hillary Clinton here, but it takes a village. The people coming together, unifying, and basically try to find the common goal here.
Right.
Something common to unify under. And this is something we're having a problem with in the family law movement, is unifying under one common goal. And that is, in my mind, liberty.
Uh-huh.
That should be the common goal, because that's what this whole country is, supposed to be founded on, is liberty.
Exactly. And, I think people have forgotten what, the liberty is. Sometimes we can get a little comfortable or complacent and take things for granted. And, I can think, with my sons who are veterans, on their FOBs or forward operating bases on them, when they would send pictures, I'd always see these signs that says complacency kills everywhere. Meaning you have to stay alert all the time. You have to be on watch all the time. And I think that's no different as citizens and as trying to save our republic. Mm-hmm. We need to be, complacency kills, and it'll kill our republic if we don't start paying attention to it and really watching it.
And in my mind, that's exactly what's happened. We've been derelict in our duty as Americans to ensure domestic tranquility and ensure justice, and that make sure that every single man has life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, uninhibited by any statutes, rules, or regulations. We've just allowed them to pull the wool over our eyes and dictate to us, this is what it says, this is what the law says. No, that's not what the law says, and statutory law is not law. But, that's, we have to read. We have to educate ourselves in order to be able to say, no, that's not the law. Here's the law. This is what the law says.
And then you have to have the courage to do something with it, because education alone without action is not really useful. I mean, so something, but if you don't do anything about it, then what does it do? It requires us to do something about it. So you have to get the education and learn, and then you got to put it into action, because you have to have them both. You can't have one without the other.
Right. Moral fortitude.
And it is scary, but I'm thinking the alternative is scarier. I
have to agree. Yeah. So I do have my co-host here, Chris Hallett, on. He's just quietly sitting there. So thank you, Chris Hallett, for joining us at the last second, being able to make it.
Oh, not a problem. Actually, I've been here a while. Just was working some stuff behind the scenes.
Right. So you got any questions for Glenita?
I just want to say thank you for coming on the show and talking with us and giving your insights into what you've already learned and what your goals are. So those are commendable qualities, I have to say. So that's why I say thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you. That was a very nice compliment, and I'm going to work hard to keep those. And as I go too, I'm like, don't send me alone. You have to go to the Capitol with me. I keep on telling everybody it is a joint effort. It is us going, not me going.
Absolutely. I would say if, having worked in upper management for a good portion of my working career, I can say be very careful of special interests. They will try to sell you on things that they think you need, and they will try to convince you that you need, and you don't need them. Because it's that's one of the things that leads us into this problem.
Exactly. And I'm going to really try to make sure with all the different social media, my whole thing is, you know what, don't try to convince me. You got to convince my people. You know, you need to talk to them. And even if I have to go Facebook Live or something, you know, I'm going to say, okay, what do you have to say? We're interested. You know, my people want to hear you, you know. So, but, you know,
and well, we found that in the private sector anyway, we found that instead of instituting new policy, we go through an audit policy and pull policies out and basically, excuse me, build around our core values. And that's something we've lost in law because, you know, you've got all of these quote unquote statutes, AKA policies, that they're supposed to, you know, balance the core values, but they don't. You know, it's just the way the mechanism works. It becomes so overly top heavy that it's impossible. And you get lost in all of this policy garbage and you completely forgot the thing that you were there to do. And, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why that when the people came out and voted this past November, you know, we talk about the November election, people said they want their country run like a business. Business makes money. And there's a reason business makes money. It's because we're good at it. We've been doing it a long time. And the people said, we want that. So people like Kirk and myself and you, and, you know, we said, okay, ask and you shall receive. And, you know, next thing we know, we get to the positions we've gotten to and we look around and we go, what have you people been doing all of this time? Like you said, if we were to do this, there's no way we would have had a job. No way.
No.
So,
and you know, I think too, it's interesting as I'm, you know, just learning and getting numbers. It's really interesting, the lobbyists, or what do they call them now? They're advisors. There is actually probably twice as many advisors as there is legislators. That should tell us something. You know, that's very interesting to think that there's over twice as many of them than there is us. And, you know, and what really what's motivating them?
Right. I mean, it's how are you supposed to do your job effectively if you've got 70 talking heads around you? It's impossible. It's impossible. Your voice gets drowned out, and that's, you know, so that's one of the problems with these extra policies, stuff like I'm talking about. And that's what we do in corporations. We downsize all that stuff because it's waste.
Right.
Well, here's what I see in my years of watching our legislative forces, our legislative branch, is that they get in there and they seem to think, well, we have to create new bills. So they sit around and they figure out what they want to tackle or what legislation they want to create, but they forget the oversight part. You know, and this is something I talked to Glenita and Christy Zito the other night was, you know, HJR 5. That was a constitutional amendment to the Constitution for the state of Idaho to allow the legislative branch to review rules that are made by the executive branch and to basically the checks and balances between the legislative intent of creating that agency, which again goes back to Title 74-201, that we, the people of the state of Idaho, do not yield our sovereignty to the agencies so created. So this constitutional amendment was changed basically to allow our legislators at any time during the year now, instead of having to wait through the legislative session between January and March to correct these. This is something that can be done at any time throughout the year when they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs looking for something to do. We, the people, need to stand up and we need to say, hey, this policy is unlawful. This is not within the legislative intent. It's also in violation of the supreme law of the land, or it's in violation of the Constitution for the state of Idaho, or whatever state you're in. Right. So this is something Nathan Cruz just messaged me about. Consider encouraging people to contact any particular people to participate in ongoing projects and to assist them. That's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I'm trying to put out there is let's get involved, people. As the people, we people have all political power. All political power is inherent in the people. So we need to, if Glenity gets elected, even if she doesn't, I'm still going to work with her.
Exactly.
And we'll go through and do whatever we got to do from we the people side.
Exactly.
And either start holding these representatives accountable, or you're out.
Exactly.
And that's exactly where she is correct.
And I think we need to get serious about that,
Yes,
because, it, like I said, again, in a business, if my employee isn't doing what I've hired them to do, I'll give them a couple of warnings and maybe work with them and explain to them why we do what we do, But if there is, their attitude and their intent is really not to follow what I have them do for my business, I let them go. You have to let them go. Nothing personal. You just, you have to let them go.
Right.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And exactly what you just said there, you talk to them. That's just how you treat people. Hey, not everybody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Those without sin can cast the first stone. Go right ahead. I ain't picking that stone up and throwing no stones. But I noticed that there's something here that you might be doing wrong, and I have a concern about this.
Right.
Here's the law that says you can't do what you're doing. We need to fix this.
Right. And if it's just an oversight, and you can tell if it's on purpose or if they just really didn't know. I mean, there's one thing if you don't know, but when you are purposely not doing what you take an oath to, that's a hard issue. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's outright defiance, and insubordination is what we call it in the private sector. So, that's there's lines that you just don't cross, and when people do cross them, unfortunately it's become politically incorrect to fire them, and that's not what the people want. The people want that house clear.
Yeah.
They want that thing to run like a well-oiled machine.
Right.
The well-oiled machines only have enough moving parts that it needs. This extra garbage just weighs the thing down, and it doesn't run right. Like you said, it's you got this old car with brand new tires on it and nothing else. So
yeah,
that's a perfect example. I love it.
I just think a lot of it's just really, simple. A lot of it comes down to our ethical and morals. It's, that's what motivates me. That's what it's about. And I want to pass on to my children and my, grandchildren, future grandchildren. I want to pass on to them something, and I want them to see that it was important to me and that I fought for it to keep it, because it's up to each generation to keep the republic. But if our kids don't see us do it, why would they do it?
Right. Absolutely. And that's where we, sometimes we got to say no. We want this. Well, did you get your homework done? Or, what are you doing to get it there? To get yourself there.
Right.
That kind of thing. So we end up trying to pander to them just so they don't win. Well, sometimes you have to let them win a little bit so they, come to appreciate the things that they do have.
Right.
So, but that's just old school dad talking.
No, I totally agree, you know. And, you know, and sometimes we need to, is Kurt still on here?
I think he's around somewhere. You're there, aren't you, Kirk?
Yeah, he's with us. He just had some technical problems with his laptop.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right, here we go.
So the cord came unplugged from the charger for the laptop, and then the laptop decided to shut itself off because it didn't have any battery.
Nice.
The struggle's real.
Whoops.
We are experiencing technical difficulty.
And actually, it came unplugged from the power pack, so it was the power strip. It just wasn't plugged in on the power pack.
Oh no!
But I'm back. So we're still live. We're still here, right?
I don't know if we're still live on.
Yeah, we're still good. It just I never expected your camera to go off of line because it's never happened before. So
Right.
you guys just switched places. That's all that's happened so far, and I'll fix that as we go. So Glenita, I might turn your camera off and then back on real quick to get you guys situated in the right configuration, which will mean I'll have to take the host cue back from you just momentarily, Kirk.
Sure.
But you guys just do what you're doing, and I'll figure it out. Doing fine.
So where did you leave off?
Talking about how our representatives aren't doing the things they're supposed to be doing in there, moving them from office. If they, we the people need to pick up that torch of liberty. We need to get out there. We need to talk with our representatives and find out what the heck's going on. Why are these are our concerns? We're supposed to express our concerns to our representatives. Okay, I have a concern that this policy or even this statute, even with the legislative intent of the statute, is in violation of the law. What are you going to do about it?
Exactly. And you know what? And there's a good handful of them that are very approachable. I mean, they're very, they're very good at listening, and not just listening to respond, but listening to what you have to say. I've in my journey so far, Idaho, there is some pretty, good ones. There's some that might have a little bit of pride going on and maybe are a little, but, I also think, though, too, with more people coming out, that will make them more. The more we get out there and the more people run that are willing to listen and willing to be that, they're going to start, doing that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
to give you a for example,
put myself out
one
there.
that I've run into. Sorry about that, Kirk. What was that?
I think I'm going to put myself out there to run for Congress or at least a county commissioner or something, possibly for Congress next cycle. I'm not prepared to jump in this right here, right now, and be ready by primaries in May.
Yeah, I keep getting that same request.
I think you guys should. I think you should just jump and swim. Keep swimming.
Well, I jumped into this thing with a different mission when I started it, because of, what I've done in my career. I figured, well, let me take my career and adapt it to this problem. And
can you hold that thought for 1 second? Glenita, can you please start your camera?
Oh. Where do I start that?
I asked you.
Bottom left-hand corner.
Oh, start my video.
There you go. All right, okay. We're back to normal.
Sorry,
all right, sorry, Chris.
That was
go ahead.
Technical issue on this end, my end.
It's a real live show. It's real. This, struggles are real.
Oh yes, this is live.
What was I saying? Those without sin can cast the first stone.
Yeah, we're overcomers. Look at us.
Right. We're troopers. We're still going. We're going live.
Got that right.
So
Well,
what were you going to say there, Chris?
Well, I was going to say, like, for example, you know, we're talking about statutes that can't exist in law. I just ran across one here in Florida just recently, and I'm going to remove the case to the federal court and point out to the federal court that we have a statute here in Florida that cannot exist in law. And the statute is what's called an unauthorized practice of law. Now, why that is so critical is back in 1973, the Supreme Court decided that the practice of law is a right retained by the people, right? So for the state of Florida to enact this statute is actually a Ninth Amendment violation. Therefore, the state of Florida, by enacting the statute, drops below the minimum threshold and is actually, technically speaking, not even entitled to federal funding until they remove that statute. Because what's happening is you've got these prosecutors prosecuting people for practicing their inalienable right to practice law. You would figure something simple like that would be so mundane. It would just be like, there's no way that's happening. And it's happening all over the place in the state of Florida.
Chris?
So,
Chris?
Yes.
Who does the law belong to?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
Who does the law belong to?
Belongs to the people.
There we go. And if you look up the word property in Black's Law Dictionary, it says our rights are our property. They belong
to us. Yep.
And what does the preamble to the Constitution of the United States of America say?
Well, it says you will establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility. I mean, that's it on its face. So,
right, we hereby
state that
we, the people, do.
Correct. So, and when you talk about a good example of overreach, a statute like the one I'm talking about is a huge example of overreach, because you've got this quote unquote authority or person of the people of authority that they're claiming of authority to hold somebody to a standard that they don't have the right to regulate.
Right.
So the Supreme Court decision was very clear about that. So for these states and these prosecutors to be prosecuting people for practicing law without a license, Sims v. Ahern said that the states cannot license the practice of law. They can license the business of law, but they can't license the practice of law. So basically, the court's defense mechanism against bad case law is just dismiss it. It's frivolous.
Right.
It's just that easy. So, and that's up to the judges to do that. The problem is we've got these administrative courts, which also don't comply to constitutional standards.
Right.
And this is another problem that we're running into, that these guys are just quote unquote practicing whatever they want, whatever arbitrary set of rules they want.
Right.
And you know, this is where we're having this problem. And one of my points of removing the case that I'm talking about to federal court is going to establish to the federal court that this mechanism is the problem. I mean, it's got nothing to do. Granted, if the statute can't exist in law, the case is not only frivolous and a waste of the court's time, but I want answers, and my client wants answers as to how this happened to begin with. That's the real question. It's not the answer. It's about asking the right question. And my question is, how did this happen? Who did it?
Yeah.
And that's when we start finding out, you know, that's when the swamp starts draining, you know, because they scatter like cockroaches. When you start asking questions like, who did what?
The lawful
they're gone. Yeah, that's true. So
by what warrant or by what authority are you acting this way? And you have to,
right.
That's what writ of quo warranto does, is it demands you to provide the law that says you can do that.
Uh-huh.
Not statutory law, not agency policy. It has to be in the Constitution, or here's another
law.
Public law. Public law. Okay?
Right.
Public law, the Constitution, or the Constitution of the United States of America, or the Declaration of Independence, or the Virginia Declaration of Rights, or the Declaration for the Necessity of Taking Up Arms, July 6, 1775, or the Magna Carta of 1215 and the subsequent three revisions from there. That's law. That's succession of law.
That's right. So, like this goes back to what I was saying earlier. When you got these special interest groups saying, well, we need this, this, and this, well, if it doesn't exist in law, then there's a reason it doesn't exist in law.
Right.
That means they're attempting to gain some artificial advantage, or here's a tricky word you'll probably start hearing real quick in all the states. They're attempting to emolument, which is gain an artificial advantage over somebody else. And in law, they cannot do that. So when you get some time, the word emolument will basically explain is simple. It's any advantage, profit, or gain obtained as a result of one's employment or holding of office. So basically, that's the limited scope to that is government. That word was designed to keep government small.
Right.
And for 230 years, nobody's practiced it. And I just tripped over it, literally.
So, but what I like to say is Chris snuck underneath the carpet, came up on the other side of the bar, other side of the bench, behind the judges, and said, hey, guys, tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, there's this word that's been in this Constitution. It's got a little dust on it here. But he knocked the dust, that 200 years of dust off of there and said, hey, emoluments. Emoluments.
Right.
And here's what it means.
And here's what it, yeah.
Here's the original intent.
So, like, for example, murder and rape, right? When you outline the process of the murder or outline the process of the rape, okay, this problem that we suffer, which is the process of the RICO action, the reason these cases get dismissed is because they haven't called them what they are, a crime of emolument. And until we come forward in force and just blast it for what it is, it's going to keep happening. So that's when E-Clause was born. And now I'm practicing doing something I really did everything I could to avoid doing my entire life, but now I'm doing it. So,
right.
Well, we're glad you are.
Now, I did tell them about your stuff, Chris Hallett. So there's some, they know at least kind of your name and what's kind of going on there. So I've been talking all sorts of people that I can, whoever I can talk to about it.
Whoever will listen.
Right?
Absolutely, because nothing will help your constituency more than just getting out of their way and letting them do their thing. If they do it right, they make out great. If they don't, steer them back on course a little bit. That's kind of the difference. You don't need to stand with, okay, you do this, and you do this, and micromanage them. That's not what it's about. So,
I had a question.
People are sick of micromanagement.
And I can't find it, but I think it's like Article 3. It's on the judicial branch where it talks about dismissing judges for poor behavior.
Mm-hmm.
How does somebody go about doing that? How do there needs to be some accountability to where
yes, it does.
Their poor behavior, and it's in our Constitution. I know I just read it. It's like in Article 3, section. I'd have to.
In your guys' Constitution in Idaho, does that word appear in your Constitution, emolument?
I haven't seen it because if I did, I probably would have had it because I write definitions here when I don't know what they are.
Mhm.
So I probably would have looked that word up.
Now, because it doesn't, here's an example. It goes all the way back to when the country was formed, when each state brought forth its constitution to the republic, and the republic ratified them as a state. Because those states were deficient in defining what constitutes an emolument, and Florida and Ohio consequently have the same problem, so it's not just you guys. They're technically speaking, their contract or their constitution, however you want to call it, is deficient and does not qualify to be a member of the republic, because it does not provide equal protections to protect the citizens against those practices. And there is the problem. So it exists in the United States Constitution, but it doesn't exist at the state level. And that's how they're getting away with it. That's where the rub is.
Yeah. I'm going to have to scour my Idaho Constitution. I don't know if emoluments is in here.
It's not in Ohio and it's not in Florida. I can tell you, I've already searched those PDFs multiple times for it. It's not there. And that was the main defense mechanism against this problem, and its prosecutorial language was the original articulation of the 13th Amendment. So to even try to define it in law now, okay, without its prosecutorial language, attempting to define it is an impossibility, which I brought forth in my personal case, and the court's scratching their head going, oh man. Uh-oh.
So Article 4, I'm actually right there, actually. Let me see.
But the good news is we've asked the right question, or at least in context of my personal case. So, I mean, how that helps you guys, I don't know. But in context of my personal case, I figured out what the right question was. And, you know, that's what we're asking now. And I took it a step further and said, according to President Trump's request for assistance under Executive Order 13781, where he asked for help from the citizenry to basically rebuild the executive branch, I said, okay, I can definitely do that. That's what loss prevention does in private practice. So find the problem. Well, before I can make my report to him, I got to ask the judges, what does this word mean in the practice of law, and how does it affect the executive branch as far as an enforcement branch is concerned? So that's what I'm doing. That's my mission.
Chris? So I just barely caught Josh Gibbons. Idaho Constitution, Article 4, Section 12. Thank you, Josh Gibbons. I'm kind of trying to watch my phone and my both laptops at the same time. But here it is. Article 4, Section 12, Lieutenant Governor to act as governor in case of the failure to qualify, the impeachment or conviction of treason, felony, or other infamous crime of the governor, or his death, removal from office, resignation, absence from or inability to discharge the powers, duties of his office, the powers, duties, and emoluments of the office, or the residual of the term, or until the disability shall cease, shall devolve upon Lieutenant Governor. That there is the word. Emoluments is there.
But it's only defined in terms of the governor's office, right?
Yeah. Head of the executive branch.
Well, that's actually deficient in the actual interpretation or the actual intention of the Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 of the U.S. Constitution, where that basically appears in all forms of government, right? The legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So For them to narrow it down to the executive branch only, that's almost an incomplete definition by design. And I would ask the court to further clarify it. It's a logical question under the circumstances.
Well, Josh, do you know of anywhere else it pops up in the Idaho Constitution? If you do, kind of see if you can. Yeah, Ante, we're kind of got a closed thing going tonight for right now, so hold off on trying to join to ask questions or anything like that. If you got something, go ahead and post it through there if you can. So, do you have any questions for us, Glenita?
You know what? I've just been learning. I'm like listening and gleaning from you guys. There's just so much to learn. I will have questions, and I look forward to learning more from you guys. I think I pretty much asked all my questions for now. So
there was one.
Well, if you get stuck, you got our numbers. You can call us anytime.
Thank you, Chris. I will.
Absolutely.
There was a question that you had asked me the other day about our Idaho Constitution, about special proceedings. Okay.
Yes.
This is Article 4, Article 3. Article 3, this is limitations on the legislative branch. Okay. Section 19. Local and special laws prohibited.
Right.
The legislature shall not pass local or special laws in any of the following enumerated cases. That is to say, now I'm going to give you an example because this is actually something I'm working on. And if you go down a little ways, there is this granting divorces.
Right.
Okay? Now let me take you to Idaho Code, Title 7, Special Proceedings. And this is what's happened to me. And this is happening to other people out there that haven't gotten married. Go into Chapter 7, or Title 7. Here, family law license suspension. Suspending your license for not paying child support comes under special proceedings. Not allowed to do special proceedings. Where is it? 11. Oh, yeah, Chapter 11. So Title 7, Special Proceedings, Chapter 11, Proceedings to Establish Paternity. Okay? So you go in here, and then it gets down and it says, oh, by the way, when it comes to the custody and that kind of part, we go under divorce actions, and I refer you to Title 32, Chapter 7 there. That's divorce action. And so what has happened to me is, and I kind of confronted the judge and the court, both parties over there, the attorney and her. I'm like, hey, how do you have an action for divorce and grant a divorce when there's no contract, there's no marriage contract here? And here's the Idaho Constitution says you can't. But you look up my record, and it shows that on June 29th or June 30th of 2015, that a decree of divorce is entered on the record. And that's what they've done. That's what they do to everybody who's never been married. They go under special proceedings to grant a divorce. Because that's the only jurisdiction, going back to reading the Constitution right here. Section 16 of the same article, unity of subject and title. Every act shall embrace but one subject and matters properly connected therewith. So in order to have domestic relations and grant divorces, there has to be a marriage contract. And the domestic relation, that's it. And then here's one for Chris, because you were a comment that you made the other day. You were saying something about, oh, well, I'm just giving the technical terms. I haven't put this out there to you, but Section 17, technical terms to be avoided. Every act or joint resolution shall be...
Right.
You get burnt out.
or insane.
I've been close.
Yeah.
Knowing the stuff that I know and the history of our congressional acts that has actually caused the reasons why we are where we are, and which goes back to that audit you were talking about. You have no idea how close you are to being absolutely correct, except we're on a much bigger scale. And it actually falls under Article 5, not as a constitutional convention, but as a congressional act audit of the congressional acts. And that's also in the Federalist Papers, Section 2, 46 or 47, and I believe it was 85, 75, 85, somewhere in there. They talk about doing an audit. Now, if we were to do an audit of every single congressional act and compared it to the supreme law of the land, and anything that is repugnant is null and void, you know, Marbury versus Madison, Article 6, Clause 2, this Constitution is the supreme law of the land. This Constitution and the laws made pursuant thereof. It has to be pursuant thereof. If there's no proper delegation of authority, it's not pursuant to the Constitution. It's repugnant to the Constitution. And here's the bigger one. The common law of England, this is even in my own Idaho code, okay? The common law of England is in full force and effect so long as it is not repugnant to the Constitution of the United States of America. So for those that don't quite understand what that means, is in 1608, 1609, we established Jamestown, Virginia. You know, those wealthy people came over here and established and brought the Magna Carta with them. So that is the law of the land, and the Magna Carta is the great charter of liberty. And it is for all English-speaking people. So if you're speaking English like I am right now, you might not be able to comprehend what I'm saying. You might not be able to understand me, but sometimes I don't understand myself. But English-speaking people, that is what the Magna Carta is for us. It's for us English-speaking people, not just for England. But the common law of England is in full force and effect. And some of those deals are like Chapter 29. The original 1215 was Chapter 40. In the 1225 reissue, Chapter 29, we will sell to no man. We will not deny nor defer rights or justice. That is a very powerful statement right there.
And that's in the
1225 reissue of the Magna Carta.
And the Magna Carta.
And that is in full force and effect today. And in fact, Lord Coke interpreted part of, it's in the annotated Constitution, okay, that is the succession of law where the right to a speedy trial comes from. And it so says, and as interpreted by Lord Coke, that it goes from the Magna Carta, that particular part right there, number 40, then into Chapter 29 of the 1225 reissue, into the Virginia Declaration of Rights, June 12, 1776. Then from there into the Sixth Amendment of the Bill of Rights. That is succession of law, or the lineage of the right. So when we talk about lineage of the right, when I talk about knowing what your rights are and where they come from within the law, this is what I'm talking about. So the right to a speedy trial, or I'm going to go with the right to a trial by jury, which is also part of that, is an ancient right, long established before the Constitution was ever thought of.
Right.
And that's also in the Magna Carta. That's also in the Virginia Declaration of Rights. And if you read the Bill of Rights closely enough, you'll understand that the Seventh Amendment, or the seventh article of the Bill of Rights, specifically says, suits at the common law exceeding the value of $20 the right to a trial by jury shall be preserved. And no fact tried by one court, blah, 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 can't be heard by another court. That's double jeopardy. So it doesn't matter what case you're in, if it involves the deprivation of someone trying to deprive you lawfully by due process of law of any of your life, your liberty, or your property, you have the right to a trial by jury.
Right.
Even if it's civil, which I just posted that all over the place today.
Right.
Right to a trial by jury is an ancient right. So if you go into a court, and you'll go into a court, especially you family law folks out there, you'll go into a court and oh, you don't have a right to a trial by jury. My response would be, well, then this is a bill of attainder, which is strictly prohibited by Article 1, Section 8, Article 1, Section 8 clause, no, it's Article 1, Section 9 and 10. Both 9 and 10, 9 is to the states and 10 to the federal, or 9 is federal and 10 to the state. Both say bills of attainder are prohibited. Okay, bills of pains and penalty. Both 9 and 10, 9 is to the states and 10 to the most. This is in the Declaration of Independence, depriving of us of our most sacred right to trial by jury.
So
let's constitutes the bill of attainder, bill of pains and penalty.
So when you look at like Bundy's and all our Patriots and stuff, how do we go about making sure, you know, what could we do to, you know, I know they can do a civil case like afterwards for the speedy trial and stuff, but what could we have done more as a people to maybe put more pressure on them to have had a speedy trial? You know, okay, we're learning a lot from this. You know, what can we learn from it that, you know, going forward that we can not have this situation again where they're spending almost 2 years in jail? And, you know, what, as the people, what can we have done different to force them to have given them a speedy trial?
Okay, so I've been following this stuff for quite some time, so I'm well aware of what's going on. And I have tried to reach out to certain people over the last year and a half. But, you know, it's kind of a big deal what's going on down there. So some little guy like me can't say much or get in there and do much. But here's my idea, my thoughts. First of all, the Patriot Act needs to be challenged because it's unlawful. Okay, so writ of quo warranto, writ of habeas corpus, and they'll more than likely deny the writ of habeas corpus, but you can do the grounds that, okay, this is a deprivation of a fundamental right. And I know that it says in capital offenses and treason and overthrow the government, but that's not what's going on. They're not trying to overthrow the government. They're exercising their right to peaceably assemble. Right. They're also exercising their right to keep and bear arms for its actual intended purpose. Because the necessity of taking up arms from 1775 was to despotism, to ward off that despotism. Why we went to war in 1776 and declared our independence. Why we took up arms. That's it, right there. For a despotic government. Tyranny.
That's right. And to get back to what you were talking about from the Declaration, Kirk, to quote that line from the Declaration, it specifically says, "But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security." So by definition, what the Bundys were doing was their civic duty. And now they're being prosecuted for doing their civic duty. So the real answer is the rules of the bar prohibit practicing Zionism, which is basically the Declaration of Independence. So what we need is a competitive practice against the bar that does practice and is able to articulate our founding documents, like the Declaration of Independence, like the Magna Carta, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because what we end up with is a single entity that, I don't know if you've ever read their rules of practice, but oh mercy, is it ridiculous. I know I've got a bar card, so I've read this stuff, and it's just like, there's no way you're serious. I mean, probably 80% of that book is just spits all over the Constitution itself.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to throw that sucker out the door. That thing is gone.
To finish that, under the writ of habeas corpus and the writ of quo warranto, would also file under Federal Rules Civil Procedure 4.1 declaratory judgment to declare that Patriot Act unlawful.
Right.
We challenge that Patriot Act and every statute that was made pursuant to that act. Oh, well, if it's under the Patriot Act, you don't get a right to a writ of habeas corpus. No. Not unless it's for a capital offense. But that's what they try to twist it, is what they did was a capital offense. You're trying to overthrow the government. No. That's not what we're doing. You don't have any evidence of that. And in fact, the first trial that happened over there in Oregon, the ones that went to trial, were all acquitted.
Right.
Right. Well, it's funny because while we were sitting here talking, I was looking through the federal rules. I know where they are, where this is in in the rules of civil procedure, just for the sake of argument. In Federal Rule 8C, cause of civil action, is there's a list of, let me get to it here, I'll read them for you. And these are established rules under federal procedure. This is not state stuff. So,
right.
When you're talking about affirmative defenses, here's the list. It's accord and satisfaction, arbitration and award, assumption of risk, contributory negligence, duress, estoppel, failure of consideration, which I think really qualifies to the Bundy case, fraud, illegality, another one that hits them, injury by fellow servant, and I think that is the one that they could really torpedo the prosecutor with, is injury by fellow servant. Latches also applies, license, payment, release, res judicata, statute of fraud, statute of limitations, and waivers. But I think out of all of those, I think injury by fellow servant and latches are two of the most affirmative defenses that I think the Bundys could trash the prosecutors with and be gone tomorrow. But the rules of the bar prohibit them from using those as affirmative defenses, even though they appear in the federal rules.
Right, because of that admiralty jurisdiction that was extended back into the land by congressional act in 1845.
Right.
The same,
and that's one of the reasons why I've made them mad, just for lack of a better expression, is because I'm using those defenses in defense of my clients. And I mean, my list of clients is short, but I've used these affirmative defenses, and they're pretty effective. We've used them properly, we've used them respectfully and in context, and even the judges recognize them. And they're allowing it. I mean, they're not dismissing the cases. So, it's not wrong. It's just a different way of saying the same thing, which has never happened in 230 years. So, it's an interesting time right now.
Yeah.
It really is. And then somebody like me, and I'm listening, and I'm sure everybody else too, it's a lot to take in. It really is.
Right.
Yeah, and I just want to encourage people, don't let that deter you from keep going forward. You know, we got to keep on making forward progress here. You know, we can't stop it just because it's a lot to take in. You know, we just have to keep
I tell everybody, yeah, do what you're good at. Do what you know. I mean, everybody's good at something.
Right.
And when you find your niche, man, run with it. Because you can be really effective when you can make it work. And you can. I mean,
and then when you get another network of people and you get knitted together, you know, it makes you a full body to be reckoned with.
That's honestly,
exactly. I mean, if you'd have said I'd have been doing this, 5 years ago, I'd have told you were crazy.
Right.
If you said I was going to be doing this 2 years ago, I would have said you're crazy.
This is part of what I would like to do, and I've been trying to do the last few episodes here, is bring our American patriots kind of people together with the family law people, because this is a much bigger problem than just family law.
Right.
Okay? People need to understand that the real problem is from the War of 1812, the original 14th Amendment. That's what the War of 1812 was about. Was they burn our capital, they murdered and killed our representatives in government. They were trying to destroy the actual documents of the fully ratified 14th Amendment from 1809. And after the War of 1812, basically what that actually did was it was re-ratified in 1819 again. Okay. We have records of it, certified. Okay. And like I said, I'm part of a group here that's what they've been doing. They've been going around the country and they're looking in old books, the old legislative acts from all these original 13 colonies, 13 states, and they have found them in the record that the 14th Amendment was fully ratified. Okay, and basically that was kicking the bar, the British Accreditation Registry, out of our country, which is the same despotism that we were trying to get away from in 1609.
Correct.
In 1215 with the Magna Carta. We put a muzzle of a gun to King John's head and said, look, sign this Magna Carta, we're going to blow your frickin' brains out, and we're going to go throughout the castle, and we're going to kill all of your bloodline, your family, all your soldiers, and everybody in this castle. We're going to kill them all if you don't sign this.
Right.
So it was actually under duress when King John signed it, but what was his alternative, either full-on civil war, and they were already prepared to go throughout the castle and kill them all, or sign the Magna Carta. Well, I guess I'll let one little piece of my power, liberty, I'll grant you liberty, and to save my life and the family and all that. But then again, so in 1812, that's what the war was about, was, well, we don't want to be kicked out of here. And so they murdered and burnt. That's the Capitol building is white because it's painted white. You strip that paint off, you'll see all the charred burn marks underneath that paint because that's a stone building.
Right.
They paint it white to cover up the char marks. And then in 1845, this same bar association, because they had instituted themselves back into power in 1812, they extended admiralty jurisdiction back onto the land again.
Yep.
And because it was 1845, it's not, 2045, where we have computers and the information highway out there, and the ability to go down to the law library and pull stuff up on the computer, or go down to the, my local state capitol law library right across the street, and the federal's right down the road from there too, and our Idaho Supreme Court, they're all within like a mile and a half from me. So I have the ability to go down to the law library. I have the ability to go see my representatives, which I'm going to start doing more of. But I have the ability to go find this stuff, and they didn't have that in 1845. So now that this is all coming out, we have the ability to look at the congressional records, the congressional acts, I don't see the reason why we shouldn't have an Article 5 audit. Audit the whole freaking congressional record, and let's look at every single congressional act that was created. And if it's repugnant to the supreme law of the land, it's null and void.
Right.
Mhm.
Amen.
That is the ultimate fix.
Yep.
Without civil war, you know,
It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of people just coming forward. You know, I mean, it's more than just a one-person job. I mean, it's going to take all of us.
right. But
Right. And I think one of the things that we really need to do is reintroduce civics back in school. And I mean, not just American government, I mean actual civics classes.
Right.
Because these kids don't understand how government works. They wouldn't be able to navigate this to save their lives.
No.
I was reading,
And that is...
I was reading a piece of history where they actually had to learn the Constitution and Declaration of Independence by 5th grade. That's the way it used to be in school. I was reading a piece of history on that, and I thought, how...
We actually had it. Yeah, we had to recite both in the 4th grade.
No, not me. I didn't learn that stuff until 9th grade.
Give you an idea how far back I go. All the stuff Kirk was talking about, I remember reading in Encyclopedia Britannica, which I still have.
Yeah,
they're still on my shelf.
We had a Britannica, encyclopedia set.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a set
It
from
only
a guy.
takes one. Just so you know, it only takes one House representative to bring that action for audit.
Just one.
Just
Right.
one. So I'm looking for that one who's got, you know,
Courage.
yeah, that's a word.
Yeah, that's a good word.
You know what? If they know there's an army standing behind them, maybe you'll find that one.
Right. And
Well, if
again,
anybody gives you anything...
Vito said, we can't do this on an individual thing. We, the people, are going to have to stand up. We're going to have to let it be known. We want an audit. We want to audit the congressional record now.
Yeah. Because
Yeah, that's one thing I'm good at. Audits is one thing I am good at.
That's going to take a team of people. You know how many congressional acts have been made since 1774, I think, was the first Congress in session?
I shudder to even think.
you have the number?
Yeah, loss prevention over there's got the number. Chris Hallett.
Yeah, I
congressional act count.
Okay.
I can't hear you, Kirk. You're breaking up.
So what is the official count of congressional acts?
Oh, God. I used to have that off the top of my head, but it's changed again.
Can I Google it?
Wow.
Seriously, it's changed again. In the last 6 months, it changed again.
Well, yeah, every time they do a congressional act, it's, that
Right.
changes.
Let's see. How did I find that last time? Current count.
Since when? Since 1774?
I believe it was 1770.
Yeah, since 1777, there was.
Well, 1777. That's second Congress.
Yeah, I think I pulled it from 1777 because that was the only number I found.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, where was it?
There's a lot. Let's just put it that
You're
way.
not going to give us the number?
I want to say it was like
He's looking.
10 to the 8th power, something to that effect. I mean, it's a lot. I mean a lot. So you can't get them all on a calculator. You get that error message. You can't calculate them on a calculator.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
So we would audit that many.
Yeah.
We would
like
go
a
through
lifetime.
every single word of every act. And if there's anything in the act, the whole act is gone.
Is gone.
What you could do is, because everything is digitized, you can assemble the PDF files and create a search algorithm to search for specific words. And when you find those specific words in those acts, you can just remove that entire list, basically wiping those policies off the slate. And for example,
that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, anything relating to acts that would allow discrimination. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be race, color, creed, male, female, blah, 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 blah. And, you can go down through, like, for example, there are laws on the books in the Northeast, and I want to say it's Connecticut, to where it's still on the books that a woman can't drive down the street without a man in front of her with a lantern saying, woman driver, woman driver, woman driver, as she's driving down the road. Honest to God, it's on the book. Honest to God. The stuff you stumble onto, and it's simple stuff like that.
Tom, you better break out the lantern for Glenita.
I do. He's already got the lantern.
I'm sure he does.
Right? It's stuff that's so ridiculous. I mean, the majority of it dates so far back to before the civil rights movement, before women had the right to vote, for example. I would say probably 80% of that stuff could be just done away with, gone, bye. But nobody ever took it off the books. They just piled more crap on top of it.
What was I saying earlier? They sit around and
now we got this
stuff to make instead of looking at the
right.
old stuff and getting rid of cleaning it up.
They're hoarders.
Well, they just think they're there to make new stuff. Well, everything else is okay. I'm just, again, not to put you down or anything, but you haven't read much of the statutes. You haven't read much of the congressional acts. Even I haven't read much of the congressional acts.
No.
But I have read a lot of the Idaho Code.
Right.
I've definitely read the Constitution for the United States of America several times, hundreds of times, Idaho Constitution several times, and I've even read other state constitutions a few times.
Sure. I mean, if you really wanted to be smart about it, you could offer internships to law students to get credit hours for reading these things and calling attention to acts that are on the books that really shouldn't be there. And that would be something to teach them to teach them and make them understand how the mechanism works.
Right.
Because, unfortunately, we've got a generation out there now who was never really taught civics. They don't understand it. I mean, they wouldn't know the preamble if it came up and punched them in the face. So it's like,
I don't know many of my
Houston, we got a problem.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, I don't know many of my generation that would know it.
Yeah, I mean, we used to studying the preamble and the pledge was every morning before school.
Here's our preamble.
That was the first thing we did.
We, the people of the state of Idaho, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, to secure its blessings and promote our common welfare, do establish this Constitution.
Right.
And I don't know, we the people of the state of Idaho.
That's right.
Grateful to who? Almighty God.
See, that's the thing. Here's another word game for you. What does actually state mean? The people of the state. This is our status in society as a whole.
Right.
Our sovereign status, our status. So when people say, well, the government, we the people are the government.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else is an elected official or appointed into a position of public trust to represent the people for government. We are the government. We are self-governed.
Governing.
We are a republic, by the public, by consent only. And there's no putting our rights to a vote democratically, because we're not a democracy. We're a republic. We're a constitutional republic.
Correct. So to cite democracy, we're a republic based in democratic principles, but our system of government is definitely a republic.
Yeah, the only thing we do democratically is elect public servants.
Right.
That's it. That is the only thing that we do democratically.
Correct. And ironically, you know, you've always got the naysayer, the one who lost the election, every single election cycle. We need to get rid of the electoral college. It's every election cycle.
Right.
You know, and that's just the sour grapes from the loser. And it was always kind of a joke when I was growing up. And, you know, now these people are serious about this. And it's like, whoa, time out. You know, no, you're not.
Win by
You know, it's one thing.
the rules. Yeah.
People need to fully understand the reason why that's there. It's so that we don't have a population in 1, 2, 3 states that dictate to the rest of the frickin' country who our president's going to be.
We don't need California, Chicago, and New York dictating what Idaho's doing.
Right. And without the electoral college, that's exactly what we would have.
Yep.
So, you know, and, you know, those were the dangers of democracy that the forefathers wrote the college to prevent that.
Yes.
So, you know, learning how to practice these things, there we go. We keep coming back to that word. You know, like I said it in my judicial report, it doesn't matter what the law says or doesn't matter what the law says if the people practicing it are not practicing it as it's written and intended.
Right.
And, you know, so when you look at it and you look at this monstrosity that they've created this thing to where they can move throughout these little tunnels that they've created to practice it however they want, because they got you chasing everything on the top row. They're practicing all the crap out down underneath.
Right.
They're literally insulated.
Right.
So,
yeah. And you know, it's things like that right there, putting that electoral college in the Constitution. You know, the people back then, they were not dumb. By no means.
No.
Just because it was 1775 or 1787 or 1789 or 1791, trust me, these people were smart, they were sharp, they were well educated.
From oppression, they came from, and they were changing everything that they came from. That was their main.
You want to talk about firsthand knowledge? Those people did.
Yeah.
They had firsthand knowledge of what despotism is and what tyranny really is and what they actually fought against. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
Life, death, blood, you know.
Correct.
I don't know how many
another practice that I talk about.
Of the Declaration of Independence, they were murdered. Their families were murdered, raped, burnt their land, burnt their cattle, all of their animals. You know, took their fortunes. All of the signers of the Declaration of Independence died in that independence. That war.
And lost wives and children, like you said. There was a huge sacrifice, but that's how important it is for someone to give up their life and even risk their family. That is how important that liberty and that freedom was to them. It was worth their very life.
And just so everybody knows, that's where the 3% comes from. Only 3% of the population in 1776 actually took up arms and stood up.
Yep.
Right.
That's where 3% comes from 1776. So, folks, can we get more than 3% of the population in this country to stand up and just say, hey, we want an audit. We don't want a civil war. We don't want a bloodbath. Let's do this civilly. We're supposed to be seriously, we're supposed to be a civilized society nowadays. We should be able to sit down and go, hey, there's something wrong here, and let's take a look at what's wrong. And let's find out the root of the problem.
Right.
Well, see, there's a benefit to being a big guy. I could probably account for 2% by myself.
Well, let's see, 320 million. And 1% would be 32,000, so 3% would be 96,000 people. Can we get 96,000 people to stand up?
I think we could.
I think we could.
Yeah, we got that many keyboard warriors out there just on Facebook and Twitter alone. You know, imagine if they were educated.
Imagine that.
Talk about a force to be reckoned with.
Right?
It's kind of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can lead a person to knowledge, but you can't make them think.
Right. Correct. Exactly. You know, everybody is so concerned with what somebody else might think of them now. You know, this is what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, the practice of branding, going all the way back, speaking of that same history.
Right.
They've managed with the with the technology age being what it is, and public record being what it is. That's why being charged with a crime is the thing that kills you. Status of adjudication is irrelevant. So if you're charged with a crime and company ABC looks into your background and it says, oh, you got a charge of blah, 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 your application gets thrown into the bottom of the pile. And you didn't really do anything. Somebody made a claim against you and somebody wrote it on a piece of paper and stuck it in your public record file.
Right.
So
but the thing is, they didn't make a claim, they charged you.
Well, they made a claim, and the person who made the claim was in a position of a quote-unquote authority to put that into your record file, right?
Yeah, but
that's the problem.
They make complaints and charges. You've been charged.
Again, we can semantics that all night long and probably come back to the same conclusion.
But you know it isn't. This is the word game. This is the word game.
Right.
Okay. What
exactly. The end result is you're branded. Right. I mean, let's just get to the end of it.
What's the difference between a claim, a complaint, and a charge?
Complaint and a charge.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just trying to listen. I didn't hear what he was saying. What's the difference between a complaint and a charge?
No, a claim, a complaint, and a charge. What is the difference in law?
Go ahead, Kirk. One exists in law, one is
actually a tort claim. Okay, is both civil and criminal. Okay, the tort claim is actually the claim of a trespass upon your property and a claim of deprivation of rights. A complaint is, under admiralty jurisdiction, a violation of a contract. And you charge is you're being charged, literally, a fine, a fee that you owe to society. And you have to pay that. Pay that debt because you broke public policy or the penal code.
Right.
So that's the difference.
And that's where attorneys come in and they attorn what?
Yep. And the root word of attorney is attorn, and the attorney means to take your property, rights is property, and give your property to someone else, whether that be the other moving party or to the court. And more specifically, when you're talking about hiring an attorney, you're actually telling the court that you're so mentally deficient that you cannot take care of your own administrative duties and present your case. Not represent, but present. Because you don't represent. You can't represent yourself. I am myself. I'm a man. I'm a creation of God. how do I represent myself? I can't represent myself. I am me. Me is me.
Unless you start talking to yourself and answering yourself, then that would be a problem.
Well, I try to keep that on the down low. But,
Right.
hold a conversation with myself. Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose.
Right. If I'm having a conversation with my feminine side, I never win. I just give up.
About getting in touch with your feminine side.
Right. He just does shut up, and I say, okay. So, but yeah, I mean, it's real interesting to see how, some of this stuff works, because the stuff that many of us do all day, every day, we just don't even think about it, just because it's, our normal everyday life. These are things that, like I say, I never realized I would be doing anything like I'm doing right now. I'm literally making this up as I go, and it's funny because, my dad says to me, he says, well, that's how Thomas Edison did it. That's how Benjamin Franklin did it. That's how Edward Rutledge did it. Do I need to go on? And I'm like, no. Leave it to my dad. He can still school me.
There is wisdom in old age, right?
Yep.
Some of that wisdom is missing in our younger generation, like what you were talking about. They don't even teach that stuff in school. So we as parents need to start teaching our kids, because this...
And it's really the parents' responsibility, really. If I'm seeing it not being done in school, it really comes back to me. It's my duty to train up my child. It's not going to be anybody else's responsibility but my own to make sure that they're brought up and raised up and taught. That's our parents' responsibility, but that's a whole nother program.
Well, that's part of the problem is see the educational program when the states took over our public education. Said, well, we're in charge of this now. Well, who are you? We the people are the government.
Right.
Who are you? You're just another man dictating to me, because that's all government is. Our representatives are just a man or woman.
Right, and it goes back to that
dictating to another man or a group of men or women that, oh, you got to do this because the law says that. Like, I just made this statute, now you have to do that. No, you don't have. Show me the authority. You don't have that authority. Kick rocks.
Right. And it goes back to that section 19. I even think it says that in that too. It says the legislature shall not pass local or special laws, and it talks about education.
Right.
There's a huge list, everybody. You need to read it, because it's a huge list.
Yeah, it is a huge list of all the things that have limited on making local municipal rules, policies, and special laws. Special proceedings.
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is the thing I kind of have put out there is we need to start taking our kids and doing homeschool. We have that right.
I homeschooled our older boys.
Written in the Idaho Constitution and the Idaho statutory law. Okay, so if you live in a neighborhood, this works out great, because you can go door to door and you can find out the ones that are either stay-at-home moms or don't, they don't have a job or whatever. You figure out who can do what within your local community,
right?
And you start doing homeschooling.
Right. There's a lot of that.
School crap, Common Core crap. That stuff's got to go. And we have the choice to send our children to either a public school, a private school, or homeschool.
Exactly.
That is our right, God-given right. In fact, creator-endowed right.
Exactly. Exactly. And in our education, too, I think it's important. I think that's something that we need to look into, is to give that parent a choice. You know, a lot of them can't afford to pay their taxes, which go to the public school, and then also pay for private school, or the cost of staying home and homeschooling their children. So there has to be, you know, let them have that opportunity to choose where they want their kids to go. And then again, you're going to have that good competition. Good competition always will make people better, you know. You know, we're all competitive. I don't care what you say. You know, you start raising that bar higher, that person's like, I'm going to jump that, you know. Right. And I think what's happening in our education, too, is we have don't have expectations. Our expectations of our kids' learning has lowered. You know, when our founding fathers, I was reading Webster and all of them, they were like read the whole entire Bible through by the age of 6. Okay. That ability to learn isn't any different in them than it is in our kids today, but there was expectations of them. And, you know, our children, they're sponges. I mean, they will learn quicker than we will. I mean, they're you know, and we have really stopped having those expectations on our children. And it's not bad to have expectations on them. I mean, it's, you know, they actually will thrive from that, you know, because they're wanting to please, and then they're going to want to, you know, look what I've done. And then if you expect a little bit more, you know, it's going to make them, you know, better children, you know.
There's a perfect example right there. You talk about doing an audit, and if you were to get into office, that would be one thing that you could do an audit on right there, is where all this tax dollars come from, who all's being taxed for educational purposes, okay? Right. Where does that money go? How's it being spent?
Right.
And why are our schools so crappy?
Right. And has it really
low on the
our children's
around the world?
Right. You know, a child doesn't need a big fancy building to learn in. I mean, they can learn in a teepee, you know, because, you know, it's all about just encouraging them and making it exciting for them. And if you're excited about learning, guess what? They're excited about learning. You know, it really doesn't come down to money. It comes down to the heart and the heart and the motivation behind it.
Right.
Well, what do you think about taking a break here? Do we want to take any calls? Do we want to take I would like to take a break. It's right at about 8 o'clock here. I don't know. Ed's still with us? Okay, he's there. Go ahead and roll that music there. Let's take a quick 10-minute break, and we'll come back.
10-minute break? I thought we were only doing 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours already. Goes by fast, doesn't it?
We're going longer than 2 hours?
I used to go 2 hours, but since we started going Facebook Live, I go anywhere between 3 and 4 hours. Usually we take twice. When we come back, we have 20 right now. Any of you on there that would like to come on and ask some questions, Juanita, Chris Hallett, or myself, feel free to call in. We'll take some calls after a 10-minute break. We'll be right back.
Awesome.
All right, guys. So Kirk's gonna take a break. I think he wants to take a 5-minute break. We'll see. So please keep us on of no copyright music, because there's a ton of people doing what we do. Not in family law, but a ton of podcast people. So there's a lot of no copyright music out there. I do a lot of editing, like this song here. This isn't something that you can find somewhere, but I edited it so you can hear what you're hearing. So if there's anything specific out there in YouTube land that you would like to hear as far as no copyright music, let me know and I will play it. So until that point, I'm going to play some other music. Some of the same stuff you guys have heard before. Maybe some Fade. Alan Walker, Fade. No copyright.
Yeah, we have 12 right now. We have like 25, I think it's high as 30.
Yeah, one of my family on there.
Kirk is not an attorney. This is not legal advice. This is to be considered for educational purposes only.
My opinion was released. On our messages.
Welcome back to Kirk's Law Corner Live.
Welcome back, folks. We're back from a little short break there. We're here with Glenita Zeiderfeld you're from Jerome, right?
From Jerome. Mm-hmm.
She is a House Representative candidate-elect. Primaries are in May. She's here with us tonight to share what she's going for, what she stands for. Liberty-loving patriot. I've had several conversations with her. I've gotten to know her a little bit. Great woman. Her husband's a great man. Good people that I'd like to see in office. So if you have any questions, those of you out there watching, you have any questions for Chris Hallett, myself, or Glenita, call the number there, 1-408-638-0968, and then you'll be asked to put in the ID number to join, which is 376-657-800. And it'll come up here on my side panel here that you called in. We'll get a little flip noise so everybody will hear that you called in. And we'll bring you on and let you ask a couple of questions and see if we can answer them. Nobody out there with questions, huh? Might take a couple minutes to come in. So
That's fine.
Glenita, you had just said that Ryan Bundy was released, pretrial release now.
Yeah, I was just reading that in the notes. Josh was sharing on in the messaging that he was released. So pretrial release.
Awesome.
That is.
Now, here's something that folks that you need to understand here is a lot of people got with our representatives in the state of Idaho because we had 4 political prisoners that were from Idaho that stood up, that went down there to Pahrump, Nevada, and stood with the Bundys against this tyranny, this usurpation of power by these Bureau of Land Management, BLM agents, and the FBI come in there with guns, okay? So, the usurpations of power and all that fancy stuff, these people got with our Idaho representatives and said, look, there's something going on down here you need to pay attention to. 4 of our Idaho citizens, people of Idaho, are being treated unlawfully in this court. And so at this point, we had almost every single representative from the state of Idaho sign a letter to Jeff Sessions saying, hey, there's some unconstitutional activity going on in this courtroom by this judge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what's happened here is there's enough, and this is the power of the people, okay? When you have the whole freaking state representatives, the whole state. Now, the last I physically had seen and heard, there was like 30, 40 some, and then I talked to Josh the other night, Wednesday night, and he said almost all of them had signed that letter. So that is the power of the people saying, look, you got to do something here. You're the attorney general for the whole country. You're the one that's supposed to be overseeing any criminal activity going on. And it's being pointed out. You're being told, okay, you're being put on notice. There's unconstitutional activity going on in this courtroom. And now all of a sudden things are starting to change. Evidence is actually being allowed to be presented and objected to. And the last I just heard today, I saw a video, they were talking about some black laptop that has all sorts of information on it that has been mysteriously, and I guess the judge herself said, well, I think they purposely hid this laptop. Okay, that is denial of exculpatory evidence. If you are withholding evidence that is beneficial to you, your defense, that is a denial of exculpatory evidence. So, that's what it takes. And that's what the people of Idaho have done. They've got a hold of their representatives, and they made a big enough stink about it that got these people, our representatives that represent the people, to do something about this. So I'm really curious to see what's happening. And now they're talking about pretrial release because they have been in there for so long. And now Ryan Bundy has been released. And my guess is, all the unfair practices that have been going on. They've tried the tier 3 guys. They tried them twice, trial by jury.
Almost a third time.
And they were saying they were going to try the other 2 because the other, I think it was six guys total on tier 3. 4 of them were found completely not guilty.
Right.
And on the other 2, all of the charges they were acquitted of.
Well, because there's still 2 in jail, Todd and I can't remember the other guy's name, but there's still 2, and then 4 of them are home, and then yeah.
All right, so we do have a caller here. Let's see who we're talking to. Last 4, 0347. Who are we talking with? You're on the air with us live. 0347.
Crystal?
Hi, Crystal. Did you have a question for us?
You're on the air with us live.
You need to turn your sound down in the background there.
Crystal?
Hi, Crystal.
Can you hear me now?
I can barely hear you. So did you have a question for us?
Yes. My question is, my dad has been divorced from my mom for a few years. And we get to see him periodically. He comes over to my mom's house to see us because he's been very sick with the cancer that he has.
Okay, so what was your question?
My question was, I've been trying to get in touch with you on Facebook. So me and you can talk privately about this stuff.
Okay, so we need to take this one privately then, okay? All right, so if anybody else out there has a question for us, go ahead and call in the number there. Let's see what we can get here, if we can get some questions answered. If not, we'll probably just go here for a little bit longer and call it a night. So, Chris, actually, can you explain to Glenita what you've been working on?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of an interesting project.
It is.
Ironically, one of the things that we have discovered is through the current mechanism, which until I did what I did was a monopoly, and the Supreme Court said you can't have monopolies. That became a very big problem, and it was during the transition team. Let's go back to the election, because that was actually a very key issue. This could have gone very differently depending on the results of this election. I mean, I think everybody knows that. And because things went the way they did, and it came out that, like I said before, the people want their country run like a business, and a business makes money. So at that point in time, they decided to, okay, you're right, monopolies can't exist. Show us what you've got. So my monopoly challenge actually kind of got kicked out, but not kicked out in a bad way, basically sent back to the district court. So their answer was not to admit that it was a monopoly. It was to say, okay, we're going to admit you to practice because we've been watching what you've been doing, and now you show us how it fits in your case. So that's where I'm at. But in the meantime, with my work with my clients was, and ironically, it's almost the same argument. One was a criminal defense, and one is going to end up as a resultant of criminal prosecution, which, by the rules of the court, constitutes a practice. Now, traditionally, what was done was they just grabbed those practices and molded them into the current bar mechanism. Well, the problem with that is I said, well, that bar mechanism is violating the Constitution on its face, and it's returned us right back to the same practices and suffrages we declared independence from 230 years ago. And the court said, very good point. So now what do we do? So I said, well, let me, I'll bring forth a new complaint brief, and, we can put it in front of a jury and see what a jury says. And they said, okay, that's what we're going to do. So by definition, I've accomplished multiple things throughout this past year. The first and foremost one being, we no longer have a monopolized practice of law. And because my articles of practice are literally the Constitution, and
the supreme law of the land.
I'm sorry?
The supreme law of the land.
Correct. And not only just the Constitution, but I've included the Declaration of Independence, quotes from the Magna Carta, and, the Federalist Papers, and, these different historical era issues that have literally come full circle and said, look, like, for example, the thing I was talking about before, branding, these false allegations that a lot of both men and women are suffering from now. Fake news. What do we know about how that works?
Right.
And the problem with that is when this stuff goes on your public record, you're literally branded. And branding was a practice that was abolished in the late 1600s. So, they realized that, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, this is just bad case law. And we got to figure out a way to get rid of this. So that's one of the things that I'm working with them now, is to try to figure out, well, what do we got to do to get rid of this bad case law? And that's also in my complaint, which I've published a copy of it. I did file it, and did that this morning. So we should be addressing an emoluments challenge in the form of this Title 4D and Title 4E mechanism, and how it results in these unjust enrichments. So that's why I said it's been a really exciting but rough last year for me. So
rough.
But very rewarding.
Yeah, it's been very rewarding. I can't believe how much I've learned and reapplied things that I already knew. And it's like, so now that I'm starting to actually, then when I met Kirk and said, we talked about it, do we want to do the show? And I was leery at first, and I said, you know what? No, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and, start, helping people, teaching people what I've learned so they can apply it.
Right.
And, one of my jobs in my life before this stuff happened was, I was I used to train people. I'd have 3 or 4 people under me at all times, training them into their next position. So training is an old hat for me. And, I don't mind doing it. I enjoy it. And believe it or not, it makes my job easier. Yeah. The more people know, the less I have to do. And, and they benefit because they move up the ladder. So,
right. So, hold on here for a second. Eric Parker, he's on here, and he was asking, what number to call in. So I told you, put it out there, 1-408-638-0968. Then you have to enter the, event ID number, basically 376-657-800. And if you could post your last 4 digits of your number, or even in Messenger, I sent you a Facebook Messenger asking for your last 4 digits, either there or maybe that's already, we do have one on here. The last 4 of 3655. Let's pull that on and see who we got here. All right, you're live with us online with Kirk's Law Corner. Last 4 digits, 3655. Who we talking with? Okay.
Hello.
All right, hold on. Let's see who we got here. 7731. Who we talking with? You're live with us at Kirk's Law Corner, Law for Dummies.
Hello?
Hello, 7731.
Hello? 7731, you don't know who this still is, Kirk?
Crystal!
I know that voice, Miss Rabbit.
It's Miss Rabbit.
Maelstrom, who is our other little co-host. She comes on once in a while, usually every Monday night, gives us an update. She's actually taken a case to the federal court, and Chris Hallett is actually working with her on that one. So that's going to be a case precedence. It's going to be setting case precedence with this case because he's utilizing Chris's work. and his
Correct.
bar license from his own E-Clause Corporation. Because of what Chris was talking about, they're a monopoly. They've allowed Chris Hallett to start his own private corporation, and you can take his test. As soon as you get that rolling, brother, I am working on taking that test because I would like to have that. I don't have to worry about it. But
I got deputized the other day, dude. You missed it.
oh wow.
I do solemnly swear to call bullshit on anything and everything I can possibly see fit. And that's the sterilized version.
Please call in. I'd love to talk to you on here. Eric Parker.
Who?
Eric Parker. He said that what was the number to call in. I tried to give him the number. I sent him a message on Facebook here. You're starting to get quite a following here, Chris.
I'm telling you, that's all right. The more the merrier.
Right.
Right. This is what we need to do. We need to come together.
Working on that 3%.
That's right. Let's get it done, people. Let's come together. Let's work together.
That's right. Get out of your comfort zone.
Well, that's you just said that the right thing is get on, because people are so, they can sit on Facebook and they can play and they can do this and this, but until it's a tough thing to do, to take on the federal, go into the federal court against anyone, let alone with the defendants who I have in my case. This is really hard. I mean, it's tough, but once you're out of your comfort zone and there's no success unless you get out of your comfort zone, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it's, people are so complacent. They're like, oh, I'm going to wait for somebody else. Okay. Well, my big thing was last year when Hard Work versus Breaking came out. Well, there's my moment. Dude, I finally had my chance. I finally had a case precedent that I could go on. And then, and then hooking up with Chris was like, okay, I've got my case precedent, and now I've got Chris, and now I've got my stuff put together. My shit was basically written by the time I had met with Chris, and we put it all together. It was like, bam.
Yeah. Well,
it was literally within a couple of weeks because it was already done. If you guys can start your timelines and your interested parties, start doing that before you do anything else. Start writing your timeline, and nobody knows your case like you. You write it.
Nobody knows.
Samuel Clemens said that in his autobiography.
Right.
So, back to kind of what you were talking there first, Crystal, is, I was talking with Glenita here the other day, and, about being shy and getting out there. It takes a little bit to get going, but once you do it a few times, because believe it or not, I used to be a really kind of a shy guy. Okay?
I don't buy it.
I did Blog Talk Radio for a year because I didn't want to do the live feed. I didn't want to be in the public eye. Didn't want to be criticized. I don't know. I've always been kind of a shy, quiet kind of guy. But I don't know. I just felt it was important to start educating the people and get out there. And people were asking me to educate them and talk to them. And I'm like, okay, all right, fine. And so, I found Ted when he started doing his stuff. And like he said in the beginning of the show today, I talked to him about what was going on, what I was doing, and he started promoting my show a little bit. And he's like, hey, I can do this. And I'm like, that would be awesome, but I'm afraid to go live. So, but
and
I'm
you
not.
Know what? The people we read in history are people who got out of their comfort zone. We don't read about people that stayed in their comfort zone.
Right.
Right. And Imperium, now being in the federal courtroom twice, it gives you a whole new meaning for being outside your comfort zone. From not only never being an attorney to now standing in, you know, the third largest court in the world. Holy shit.
Right? Now let me ask
and knowing that your chief justice, that your judge is a chief justice of the court.
Right.
Wow.
So let me ask you this, Crystal. You've been through that initial first state court, right?
Right.
A few times?
A few times. Just a few. Doesn't.
Okay. So is there any difference in the demeanor of the judges, in their attitude of the judges, the way they treat you? Is there any difference between your state court and that federal court?
Big time difference, at least in my case. As Chris has been able to hear, the magistrate we have in our federal court is very lenient towards pro se. As a matter of fact, they actually prefer pro se, believe it or not. You know, she's been extremely lenient with us in our filings. She's been very liberal with what we've done. Not so much as given as you can't, obviously the court can't give you guidance in it, but it's been very lenient, very, you know, Smith versus the United States of America is a really good case for people who want to be pro se. Because that gives you an understanding that, you know, they've actually, there's a case precedent where the court can't go through and, you know, say, okay, your apostrophes are wrong and your, you know, case law, you know, italics are wrong. And, you know, that was a good case for that. But I'll tell you, the federal court is on your side. They are on the Constitution side.
They want to hear
and with
from
that. Yeah, they want to hear what you know the Constitution-wise. They want to hear what you know about civil rights, what you know about the amendments, what you know about the Constitution.
They get a load of me.
Because the federal court is a constitutional court.
It is a court of law. Article 3.
Correct.
Court of law.
Correct. What Crystal's trying to say is she's trying to say that federal court is, like you said, Kirk, in an Article 3 setting. That's when people traditionally think about what the court setting is supposed to be. The court setting is supposed to be Article 3 setting.
Right.
These administrative state courts that are designed to defeat you. That's their purpose.
Yeah, that first court we go into is just a freaking machine, and you're fed into one side, ground through the gears.
They grind you up and spit you out, and you have the other end, and they don't give a damn what you look like. And
like I said before, though, you know, on October 24th, I went down to the Supreme Court of State of Idaho and listened in on an appellate hearing with Lee Arthur Rice and some other people. And totally different. And the first thing I noticed when I first walked in and sat down, there's no gold fringe on that flag. And these three judges were very kind. The demeanor was different. The atmosphere was different.
Correct.
And it was different. Because the Chief Justice flat out says, well, it sounds like a due process of law violation to me. I mean, come on. Since when does a judge ever pop off that? I've never heard that.
Yep.
You should listen to the Breaking case.
Yeah. Sit down and the Harvard versus Breaking case is an amazing because, you know, even if you just watch the short 20-minute version of it, you know, with my son being the plaintiff in the case of what we filed in the federal, the main plaintiff, you know, about
Mind
2 weeks ago.
He's only 20 years old. Make sure you fill in the blanks there, Crystal. So
sorry, yeah. He's a 20-year-old kid who is suing 8 people. Okay, 8 people, literally. One of them is the state of Utah, you know, and a few others, and about 6 attorneys. Well, 4 attorneys and a few others. Anyways, so he's 20 years old. He's taken on this case. You know, Chris and I have done most of the work for him. I've been joined with my attorney, which brought our total up to 8. But, you know, he sat down the other day and watched the Harvard versus Breaking case. He doesn't know jack shit, stuff about law. But he finally, after going through all this, I had him watch the Harvard versus Breaking, and he understood it.
Right.
You know, so if anybody, so if anybody wants to know where to start Start with that. It is a very simple case. You know, Kirk, when you're saying that sounds like this is a due process of law case, that's basically, it was so rudimentary in the way that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals did it. It's a layman. It was a layman court, basically, meaning it was geared for anybody to understand what the court was talking about.
Well, I'll explain what the case was about. Was a collection agency. Okay, so originally the child, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, was put into juvenile detention. And juvenile detention basically issued a bill for the stay. And the parents made a couple of payments on it, and they're like, you know what, this just doesn't seem right. So they went and talked to an attorney, and the attorney says, no. The statute here says that the juvenile detention center is supposed to have a hearing to adjudicate the sum certain. And part of the statutory law says, okay, there has to be a hearing. You have to provide this hearing to give the sum certain, but they're supposed to take into account certain things like the ability to pay. And what had happened is juvenile detention didn't request and petition and summons for that hearing. They skipped that step and went ahead and said, here's your bill. Now we're sending you to collections, and collections is trying to sue them for all this money. And they're claiming due process of law violations, insufficiency of process. Okay? So the Chief Justice, he reads the statute, and he says, in the clear and plain language of the statute, you're required to have a hearing. Did you do that? No, you didn't. So that sounds like a due process of law violation to me. And so from there, it was pretty much all downhill. And it was good to see the Chief Justice of the appellate court go, no, I see what it is. You didn't follow the statutory law, which is a deprivation of a right to due process. You can't do that. Minutes left on the clock. And as soon as that Chief Justice says, well, this sounds like a due process violation to me, he's like, can I reserve the rest of my time and go sit down and save the rest of my time for rebuttal? And they were like, yeah, sure. So they let him sit down, and as soon as the respondent basically gets up there, who's originally the moving party, who's defending this collection agency, and basically the 3 judges they just attacked him like frickin' piranha. And it was great to see the fact that 3 judges got it right off the bat. It only took, because there was 15 minutes on the clock, so within 6 minutes, they all got it, that it was a deprivation of a right to due process of law and in violation of the legislative intent in the clear and plain language of the statute. They failed to provide that hearing to get a sum certain and decide whether or not the ability of the people to pay that bill. So that's going to get overturned. I can guarantee you that. Just by the words that came out of their mouth right there. So again, back to, there is hope, folks. There is a difference between these initial courts that you go into. They're designed like a machine to just chew you up and extract all the money that they can out of you and cause as much conflict as they can to get as much money out of you as they can. But when you know what your rights are, and you walk into even the first court, and you file your paperwork, you make your arguments, you make your statements for the record, and in and on the record. In is your paperwork, and on is your verbal, your oral arguments. I don't care what that judge says, how they rule, what they say. Everything that's done that that's in violation or a deprivation of a right, a trespass upon your property, that's a wrong. It is a moral wrong. That is an appealable issue. You take that straight.
And hold on a second, Kirk. I'm going to stop you right there.
Second, hold on.
That's the key word, appeal. Before you go into an administrative process, learn the appellate process first. And the reason that that is so important is because if you have something that you've introduced in the district court case, it's officially in play in the appellate court process, which is the next court up the ladder, that has the ability to overturn the administrative process. So if you know and understand the appellate mechanism, that is where you can really, really do some damage to these people. Because that's not something they can fight. The appellate court is their boss. So they have to listen to what the appellate judge says. So anyway, didn't mean to interrupt that, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew and understood that.
Yeah, so to add to that, due process of law. This is the process that is due to you as a human being. It's a fundamental right, okay? So the first court you go into, you have the right to appeal that any and all decisions. So if you're in criminal court and you make a motion to suppress some evidence and the judge says, nah, I'm not going to suppress that. I'm going to allow it. That is an appealable decision right then and there, okay? But you have to wait until that case is adjudicated, and most of the time you have 42 days to file a notice of appeal, okay?
30 days. 30 days.
But the other part is, if we're going to talk about a deprivation of a right, such as due process of law, that creates a new right to a cause of action for a deprivation of civil rights under color of law, or however you want to bring that about.
Can I interject really quick? You do know it's only 30 days, at least in most states.
My state is 42 days to file a notice of appeal.
Okay, so Utah is 30 days.
Procedure. And most of the time at the end, when the first judge that you're in front of adjudicates your case, they will tell you, you have a certain amount of days to file an appeal. So whatever it is in your state and whatever court you're in, if you're in a civil court, you got to go by the civil rules of procedure. If you're in a family court, you have to go by the family laws of procedure. If you're in a criminal court, you have to go by the criminal law procedure. So it just depends on what the rules say, rules of procedure say. It's not the same in every state. So make sure you look at your.
Sorry, I just want to interject out. Sorry, because I just want people to think that was common across the board.
Right. Yeah, rules, and that's the crazy part, is it's supposed to be the same everywhere. That's part of the Constitution.
No, not necessarily, Kirk. The federal law requires at least 30 days. If the state of Idaho wants to give you 45 days, which is over and above the minimum standard, Idaho can definitely do that.
True.
There's got to be a minimum of 30 days.
Okay, right. So they can't drop below 30 days, but they can give you more days. So
I did not know
that's a good thing.
Federal.
What's that?
I did not know it was 30 days in federal. And you're absolutely correct. The state can actually extend that time, but they can't diminish it.
Correct.
They've done it the opposite way, though. Where, like, if you have a RO, a restraining order, you can't go that opposite way. It has to be the minimum. You can't go over the 20 days. But states do, for some reason. If you guys could clear that up.
Well, it depends on what you're talking. We're talking about the appeals process. What you're talking about is temporary restraining orders. They have to be heard within a minimum of a certain amount of days. So in the state of Idaho, it's 10 or 14.
Correct.
Yeah. So anyway, when you're talking about the process and how the process works, one of the things that we have said is, even though the rule of law is clearly articulated as mandated in the Constitution, this practice has constructed itself in such a manner as to do exactly what we're talking about, which is designed to grind you up and spit you out the other end of it. And it doesn't matter. Once you're the targeted person, you know, whether it's a parent in family law or an elder in probate court, or, I mean, whatever, once you're the target, they are going to wring you out for every penny they can get out of you. And fortunately for Crystal, that's what loss prevention is designed to prevent.
Yep.
Because we see that crap in corporations all the time. So
let's take a pause here for a second. Glenita, you look like you're pretty wore out over there. So I do want to thank you for coming on. Do you have any last comments to put out there for us, for the people who are watching still and may watch this later?
You know what? Just get out there and exercise your right, your responsibility to vote and make a change. Get out of your comfort zone. We need to do something before it's too late. You know, that's all I really have to say. You know, I'm thinking, and I'm listening to everyone here. I'm thinking, if we all can do it, it really could be done. You know, It's just, are we willing to? Are we willing to give up our comfort zone? Are we willing to give up our time? Are we willing to give up our money? You know, how important it, I mean, you look at our founders, they gave up their very lives, their families, their children, and here, you know, we just give up some time. So.
Right.
Well, again.
And for that, I want to say thank you, Juanita. We really appreciate that.
Glenita Zeiderfeld, District 25 House Representative candidate.
Yes.
In May will be the primary elections for that.
May 15th. And in Idaho, that's really important. Very important. It's more important, I believe, to get out there and vote in May than in November. So a lot of people don't know that.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the primaries, pretty much whoever goes from the primaries pretty much wins the election in November.
Nice.
So that's why it's important. And I think they don't really want the masses to know that's the important date. So.
Right. Okay, Juanita, go get him, girl.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and I learned so much. And I'm sure I'll learn a lot more from you guys. I'm glad to be on your team.
We are here.
Come back and see us anytime.
Yep.
6 to.
All right, thanks.
It's almost 9 now.
Okay.
So thank you for joining us. We'll have you back. We'll get Josh on here when he's available next time.
Sounds good. I'm here. I'm all in.
Thank you for picking up the torch of liberty and doing something for the people.
Hey, I'm honored.
Any last comments, Chris?
Did I just walk away?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. See you later.
Kirk is not an attorney. This is not legal advice. This is to be considered for educational purposes only.
Hello?
Yeah, we're still here.
We're still here.
Oh, sorry. I was playing Words with Friends.
Last 4. 3655. If you have questions for us tonight?
Yeah, Kurt. Can you hear me?
You still have the music playing on in the background.
Can you hear me? I'm here.
I can hear you.
Are you there?
All right, we're all set. I had to do some configuration.
Who are we talking with?
This is John Patton.
Oh, right on. Okay. Ted.
It's always a pleasure talking to you guys.
Can you cut that
What's up,
music?
John?
Well,
How's it going, guys? It's always a pleasure.
You have a question for us tonight?
How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. So I wanted to go back to the whole emoluments conversation.
Okay.
Now, Section 19 of the Kansas Bill of Rights talks about emoluments.
Nice.
And it says no hereditary emoluments, honors, or privileges shall ever be granted or conferred by the state. What I'm questioning here is, if emoluments hasn't been defined, what is hereditary emolument?
Now that's
is the right question.
You get it from your ancestors,
right?
who are from foreign lands.
Let's say the
judges are sitting listening to this station going, "Oh, please bring me that question."
Chris, I'm all out of emoluments.
Let's say that your dad is the judge, and he wants to slip you in as a judge. That's hereditary.
Well, yeah, and you know, I comprehend what hereditary means, and I've just learned about the whole emolument thing. So that's okay. So by how the law likes to play on words, they could say, well, we can receive emoluments, just not hereditary emoluments. Isn't that how they could interpret that, though?
Yeah,
well,
actually,
and until you challenge it, they can interpret it however they want.
So if the judge were to retire or get in an accident and you know, loss of life, it could you can't, the emoluments don't succeed or get passed on.
Do you guys want me to read the definition of it?
Your family. Have you got one there?
The probation of titles of nobility buttress the structure. Oh, Ante? Hang on just a second. Ante's beeping me. By precluding the possibility of an anarchist, an aristocrat, whether hereditary or personal, whose members would be inevitably assured a right to occupy the leading position in the state. Sorry about that. Ante was calling me at the same time. I'm like, oh my gosh, stop. Sorry.
All right. Well, I am beat.
And I'm getting to be old, so it's really hard to read it anyway without my glasses on.
Oh yeah, you old people over there.
Yeah.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm older than you by a year. We already discussed that the other day.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm getting pretty wore out here for tonight. So, if there's anything you guys want to add there?
Well, and that's just it right there. John is on it. I mean, without even realizing he's doing it. It's you need to put those questions together and present them to the federal court, because to define the word by itself is one thing. If there's another word attached to it, a descriptive adjective, like, for example, the hereditary emolument, to ask the court to define what is a hereditary emolument and how it works, that's an appropriate question. And if it applies in your case, you know, it could help you kind of bridge that gap and get to the end of that road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about posing questions to the court and let them figure it out. That's what they do.
I mean, that's what we pay them for.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, so I want to put a thank out to our sponsors there at Blog Talk Radio: Brian Kinter, Neil Shelton, Randy Davis, and Cheyenne Davis. on the Future of Our Children Network on Blog Talk Radio. There's several different shows on there. And then some of my associates, Lee Arthur Rice, Tony Pellegrino, Fred Kelly Grant at American Common Law Academy in Nampa, Idaho. They educate, empower, and equip. So there's some people there locally that if you're in Idaho here, surrounding area, Nampa, Idaho, there's some people that you can talk to. I work with them as well. Thank you for tuning in tonight to Kirk's Law Corner, YouTube, Twitter, and everywhere else that is going to March Us. Thank you, Ted Fogg, for promoting this and putting this out, being the tech behind the scenes here. Great job, Chris Howlett, Crystal. Thank you for your wonderful brains, your conversation, your laughs, all that good stuff that we enjoy doing here and makes it worthwhile. And of course, all of the people that tune in, your comments, your likes, your shares. This is about you, we the people, coming together, educating one another on what I don't know. I don't know everything. Chris doesn't know everything. Crystal doesn't know everything. Ted doesn't know everything. You folks out there don't know everything. That's what it's all about. It's about coming together and working together and figuring a solution out to whatever the problem is, one problem at a time. So we have to work together.
That's right.
Find the common goal, and the common goal for me is liberty. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that right shall not be infringed. And it has been for a long time. And it's time we start talking about it. It's time we do something about it. We have the right to peaceably assemble. We have the right to redress government for the grievances, their crimes they've been committing against the people for far too long. It's the same thing over and over again. It's history repeating itself. I've read it in my history, our history. It's the same absolute despotism, same tyranny, same thing over and over and over again. Thank you to everybody out there tonight.
Thank you, Kirk. We enjoy it.
Thanks, Kirk.